Hi there, and welcome to the Homestead Education Podcast. Do you have a homestead, farm, or just dream of a rural life? This is a show to help you and your kids grow your own food and grow as a person. I'm your host, Kody Hanner. I'm a homesteader, homeschool mom of six, and small town enthusiast. I was raised by an old school rancher and blessed by the grace of God to have been exposed to so much of what rural life has to offer. Join me every week to talk about homesteading, homeschooling, and growth with a homestead education. Hi, and welcome back. I just want to remind you that you can get all my homestead science books on my website and many on Amazon for a new way of teaching agriculture to today's youth and aspiring homesteaders by focusing on small-scale farming and self-sufficiency. If you are a school, co-op, or retailer and need invoicing, please feel free to reach out to me directly. This also includes my newest products, Homestead Trivia, Raising Self-Sufficient Kids, and my gift cards. So I'm so excited to have you guys back. Last week was our season premiere, and I talked about some things that I haven't really my chair is making tons of noise. Um, Kids have probably been playing with it. I talked about a lot of things that I haven't been that I've been chewing on and wanted to share with you guys and see what your thoughts were. So if you missed that episode, be sure and hop back over there and listen to it. I think it's time for some homestead updates. I've been telling you about our heifer Blue, our purebred brown Swiss heifer, who is bred to a purebred brown Swiss bull, and we are so excited for this calf. And she was huge over the summer, so we thought, oh, she bred right when we put him in. So we get the vet out to make sure she has all her shots, and he's like, yeah, she's like 5 months along. Oh, bummer. Okay. So from there, we, count out to when she'd be due, which was February 2nd. And she started like, showing some mucus before then. So we're like, okay, let's get her in the barn. It's really bad weather. So we want her in the barn where she's safe and warm and all those things. Um, get her in there and no calf, no calf. Due date comes, no calf. So then we are, at the time of recording this, we are 18 days past her due date, and this poor girl is still locked in the barn. But the weather is horrible, and she is absolutely the heifer that will, the minute I let her out of the barn, like drop the baby in a mud puddle and take off running, and we'll never see her again. So that's how a lot of heifers are actually, but at least, with dairy ones, they really mellow out after they have their first calf. But for right now, we're still dealing with that heifer attitude, and there's a reason they're called salty heifers. So I recalculated her date because when the vet said she was 5 months along, he was like, 4 or 5 months. Yeah, let's call it five. So I was like, okay, let's calculate her date backwards to 4 months, which turns out I'd actually done like 4.5 months just to um be safe. So I calculated her to 4 months, which would have had her having the calf 4 days ago. And we still have no calf. And she is the size of a house, literally. She's probably 5 to 6 feet wide. She is bagged up. Her vulva is like large. Her the tendons by her tail, they're like completely gone, which that's an indicator that they're getting ready to go into labor. I am completely at a loss because um I've never really dealt with this before. We've always had really easy dairy cows, or beef cows, and yeah, so I guess we're just still waiting. I had that fear like maybe the calf died or something, but I mean her health is really good. She's eating really good. And I've gone out there a couple of times and her stomach is in a totally different position, which tells me it's the calf moving around. So Um, I guess we're just still waiting. But, we're really looking forward to her milk. Our Belfair doesn't provide enough butter fat for us to make butter and cream out of her cream, or like, whipped cream out of her cream. So we're really looking forward to some brown Swiss milk. And yeah, we have nothing. So that's what's going on with Miss Blue. So, it seems how she's making us wait so long. Will you guys please like pray and keep your fingers crossed for a heifer? Because at least a heifer we can train, breed, and sell in a year for quite a bit of money. Or, if we ever need a replacement, we have that. But because we live cover, we have no clue what we're getting. Um, let's see here. The next project I've been working on the homestead is getting all of our pig records in line. I've talked a little bit about how we are massively expanding our pork operation, which um, I said we were going to be shipping a couple months ago, and we had some glitches with our website stuff where I actually would like with the Homestead Education website. So I had to pull my website guy off of development for the farm page and focus all his energy on fixing the Homestead Education page. So we'll be circling back to that soon. But we want about 3 to 4 new sows this year. Two of them are going to be to expand the herd, and two of them are going to be some replacements. One, we lost a sow, and then we have another sow that we think is has run her course. So I need to be taking better records so that I know, um, who's farrowed consistently, who weans a lot of piglets, who breeds back easily. We kind of know in our heads, but we'll probably have 10 sows this year. And so yeah, that's not a large commercial operation, but it's what I call a commercial homestead. We're not, just breeding one sow for our personal uses and sell a little to the neighbors. Like we are selling 100 piglets a year. We are feeding out 100 pigs a year. We're selling whole hogs, half hogs, breeder stock, retail cuts, looking into the shipping. Like we are a jammin' operation. And the other night we were trying to figure out when the last time this like first year sow we have farrowed, um to decide if she was doing what she's supposed to do. And my husband and I are literally flipping through 2 years of pictures on our phone because we always take pictures like the day they're born. It's hard to tag piglets, and we don't do the ear notching, so pictures are always helpful because then we can identify markings and stuff. But we're going through years of pictures, and then we get to the one we think it is, and we're like, is that Boreo or is that Pickles? Because all of our sows have names because they're spoiled. But we can't tell because they look really similar, and she was kind of far away in the picture. But I'm like, wait, I have a picture here of Pickles with a litter 3 weeks before that, and then here's this other pig with small piglets, so that has to be Boreo. I mean, it's just that should not be how our record system is. So we are putting all our records together. There's a few things that just don't interest us at this point. We don't do what their weights are at birth and what their weights are at weaning. Um, one, because I've bought 3 scales and my husband has lost all 3 of them. That's a whole nother conversation. If anybody has like an extra one of those like hanging scales that like you can hook like a calf sling to, I have the calf sling sitting under my desk right here. Um, I would happily, get it from you. Um, but we just don't think that we just changed our some feeding protocol stuff, which is great, but we don't have data from before that to even compare to. So at this point, that's not really a huge concern for us, especially when we don't have a way of weighing our pigs um, at larger weights. We've had a couple of scales over the years. They were older scales. Scales are not cheap. But we've been raising pigs long enough that I can look at them and be like, oh, those are about 100 pounds. Let's go ahead and move them to a grower feed over a starter feed. Oh, they're getting close to butcher. Go ahead and call and make the butcher date. And our pigs are consistently between 250 and 300 pounds live weight. So I feel really comfortable with eyeballing when, I've been raising pigs since I was a kid, but I still need some better records as we make some choices because the scaling that we want to do, we want to make sure that we are saving the most money that we can, but we also really want a better barn situation because we lose a lot of piglets when we farrow in the winter. And so we want to be able to make some additions on our barn. So if we want to try to be able to get maybe a business loan or some sort of grant or something to be able to do that, I need to have all my records in place. So this is really important for us. Now, this leads me to another conversation that I've seen kind of bouncing around on the internet a lot this week in regards to buying direct to consumer meat, which is what we do. We're the farmer, we sell direct to consumer. Um, yeah, you can come to our farm, or when we ship, we can, ship just, 10 pounds of sausage. But a lot of people like to buy um pigs or steers or lambs or whatever they're going to buy in the whole or half form. And the reason for this is one, you can get a slightly better deal and fill your whole freezer. But the farmers like doing this because that meat does not have to go through a USDA butcher. It can go through a state inspected butcher, which saves them money, or saves the customer money, and it's a lot easier to get in with those butchers. The USDA butchers, there's so few and far between right now that sometimes you're looking at a 3 to 4 month waiting list. And yeah, we're small farmers. I don't have it locked in where if I say I have pigs that are 150 pounds today, that they will be 300 pounds, come May. I would love for that to be the case, but that's just not the operation that we run. And that's not the operation that a lot of small producers run. Um, there's even times I go to buy like our grower and starter feed, and our local feed mill is out. So I have to buy a maintenance feed because I still have to feed my pigs. But then they're getting 3% less protein and 2% less fat for the next 2 weeks until I can get some more feed from our feed mill. And during that time, they're still gaining, but I definitely lose rate of gain amount. So anyways, being able to go through those state inspected butchers, a lot of times I can just call and be like, hey, I have a pig ready and I have a buyer. He's like, cool, I'll be there next weekend. Especially when we work with them a lot. So what the way that works a lot though is people don't sell their pigs for a flat rate because pigs' weights can be all over the place. Like I said, uh 250 to 300, sometimes they're 325, sometimes they're 225. I usually have them right in that window, but it's not, I can look at a pig and because it's really long bodied, I think it's only 250 pounds, but it's a really stout, long bodied pig. And it actually weighed in at 320, I mean, it's kind of hard to say for sure when you don't have a scale. So also, if I don't have a scale, I can't tell a customer that I'm charging you $3 a pound on, live weight because I don't know what that weight is. So what a lot of, and that can vary, even somebody who does have a scale, if that pig eats a whole bunch, um, that weight could be 5 to 10 pounds more. And when you're looking at $3 a pound, that could be $30 more that you're paying for that pig. And that's a lot when you're looking at the big picture. So the butcher comes out and, they'll slaughter a lot of times right on at the farm, or sometimes they'll pick up the animal and take them to their facility to slaughter. At that time, they'll weigh them. So slaughter is, putting them down, um, eviscerating. Some of them skin, some of them don't. Some of them leave the head on, some don't. It just depends. So the number you get there is called hanging weight. And that is what customers usually pay for is hanging weight. On our farm, we charge either 425 or 450 a pound for hanging weight. 425 for a whole hog, 450 for a half a hog, because there's a lot more back and forth on that and it costs us more. Um, and the reason that we use that weight is rather than the weight that the family picks up from the butcher, is because it can vary. If one person orders all bone-in roasts and another person orders all boneless roasts, that end weight is going to be totally different. Like, so instead of, a whole hog, you get about 150 pounds, maybe more. If they do all boneless, they might only be picking up, um, 100 pounds of meat. And yes, the other person's paying for more bone, but there still is uses for those bones. And somebody's trying to open my door. She needs packing tape. This is what happens when my recording studio doubles as our shipping facility. So, um, Yeah, she's working on some other projects right now. Um, so yeah, you can take those bones and you can make dog treats out of them. You can do, pork broth. There's a lot of other things. Some people like the bone on when they're, doing certain smokings and stuff like that. So it does vary. And that's also another reason why a lot of producers won't pay the cut and wrap because some people want their hams plain. Some people because they want to smoke them themselves or they just like a roast. Some people want them smoked. It's $1.50 more a pound to have them smoked. Some people want plain sausage. Some people want breakfast. Some people want Italian. You get Italian sausage, that's an extra dollar a pound to have Italian sausage, at least from my butcher. But I mean, there's still those same types of fees across the board. So as a producer, I don't want to say, hey, it usually costs about $150 or, well, that's for a half a hog, about $300 for cut and wrap. If I offered to pay that and then they go in and do all sorts of, they wanted everything smoked and special seasoning and little like smoky jerky sticks and all that type of stuff, I could be looking at like a $500 bill for when I only charge the customer $300. So that could really hurt me as a producer. And customers, like I said, two customers could go in and each pick up their half of the same pig and pay exponentially different just because of the cuts that they chose. So that's why we do everything based off of hanging weight. I've seen a reel floating around about this, and I also had a friend reach out to me this week when I put out last week that I would really like to start answering your guys' questions online, making sure that I'm meeting your needs, answering these questions through the podcast or on social media. She saw that and she's like, well, Kody, this is perfect because I have pig questions. So her and I actually had a 2 day long conversation about her getting started with pigs, but I saw that hanging weight's probably the biggest question on that is why we do that and what it actually means. So if you want to submit a question for me to answer during this segment of my podcast, you can go to thehomesteadeducation.com/help me grow, all one word, and I will be happy to get those questions answered for you. Are you looking for new ways to advertise your business? I would like to invite you to advertise your business on the Homestead Education Podcast. Did you know that 60% of listeners will make a purchase after hearing an ad on a podcast? Why is this? Because personal connections and credibility from someone they truly trust will give you the best conversions. My podcast has been on the air for over 3 years now, and with an average of 5,000 downloads per episode and tons of long-term listeners, you're bound to have somebody who will find that credibility in me. All ad spots will be promoted on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and my weekly newsletter. I have podcast sponsorship spots available that are affordable for all business sizes. And all advertising revenue will be used towards my educational outreach in the form of travel costs, curriculum development, supplies, and the administration of such activities. Go to my show notes now or visit thehomesteadeducation.com/podcast-sponsorship. I hope to hear from you soon. So, what I want to talk about today might ruffle some feathers, but I've really been looking at agriculture through a different lens. Again, those of you who have followed me for any amount of time know that I was an Aggie turned homesteader. And now that we have an administration that's looking a little bit closer at what farmers do, and I've been writing my homestead history book, I'm looking at it through a different lens again. And I haven't changed my stance on anything. I still think that there's some problems with big ag, and I still think that we should be focusing more on growing our own food as a society. But there is a lot of information that happens in between. So we're calling this Aggies versus Homesteaders, who will win in the sourdough bowl. Um, and but I took a deep dive this week. I wrote some blogs about it. If you want to head over to my blog, I'll link that in the show notes as well, where I've been talking about food waste, how we can take pressure off of farmers, subsidies, vocational ag classes, those types of things. Because I think that these are a lot of topics that kind of as a society we've forgotten about a little bit. So, um, as far as being a homesteader, but still considering myself very agricultural based, um, I've seen a lot online, where there's cattle ranchers come on and like there's nothing wrong with the vaccines for cattle, and then I have my homestead friends coming on and saying like I don't want my cattle to have mRNA vaccines. It's a lot. Um and it's a lot to decide where you stand on these things. I would like to say as a scientist, I have seen a lot of really great research on herd immunity, both by using vaccines and through natural immunity. Um But then we're learning a lot that the information that's been provided to us about vaccines, both for humans and animals, I think that's a whole nother deep dive. But a lot of that funding was done privately, not through the government, and then the government like kind of claimed it as their own. And I think we're getting just a lot of misinformation. So, personally, we don't vaccinate the animals on our farm. We don't feel a need to. Everybody's healthy. If I'm selling 4-H pigs, they do have to be vaccinated, but I vaccinate them on the way out the door so that they're not dropping feces and things like that where my other animals are. I also worm every piglet that leaves my property, and that's something that I won't change my mind on. Piglets are very susceptible to stress, and because we have a holistic system on our farm where, all animals have a little bit of a worm load. I raise dirt pigs, they live on dirt. And we are holistic enough at this point that my pigs can live on dirt and I don't have to worry about worms. But if a piglet leaves our property and their immune system tanks, either any type of low level worm load that they would have already had or any worms that they pick up in their new facility or new pen, they would have no immunity to, and they could end up with a really bad worm load. And especially kids who are raising them for 4-H, that can just kill their rate of gain, which could mess them up for fair. And that's not what I'm interested in doing for these kids. And, one dose of a wormer at 6 or 8 weeks old is not going to ruin that meat at 6 or 8 months old. So, um, that's just kind of my stance on that. So, but like I've heard, I've seen a lot online. I've heard from other exhibitors who go to like ag conferences and stuff that they're just not really fond of homesteaders. They think that we're all against them and that we're not, agriculture, of course, when you are a big farmer, you're doing it for profit. I'm not saying that in a bad way. We all have jobs. I mean, what if someone told you like you should feel really bad about yourself that you charge people to be an accountant? Like, yeah, you're doing it to make money. Um, but I went to this conference and I was really surprised as to what people had to say. I touched on it a little bit last week, but I said that today would be the day for the deep dive. Uh, so yes, like I said, farmers, they're in it for their paycheck, but the individual farmer is doing it because it's a way of life. And at the Ag Expo, the expo was catering to big ag. That was completely the design. I mean, they had farming equipment there that, I mean, you'd practically have to be a millionaire farmer to even consider affording. Uh, I mean, there was side by sides there that the starting rate was $50,000. I was just blown away. Drones for um like putting fertilizers and pesticides and things like that on fields that were bigger than my car. I mean, I mean, it was awesome. It was so cool to see as somebody, that came from an ag background. But I mean, I don't have a need for a drone the size of my car to fertilize my garden beds. So it was a little bit outside of something that interests me beyond just pure curiosity. However, I wouldn't have been able to learn anything anyways or go visit go to any of the talks or visit any booth for any amount of time because I was slammed the entire time I was there. I was shocked as how many people wanted to stop and have a conversation with me um, about what we were doing, which I got a new banner specifically for this conference, but I actually think I'm going to stick with it because I like the message that it sends, and it says Ag Class for Home Educators, which is exactly what we're doing. I'm teaching home economics, vocational agriculture, along with science and business in a way that um, families, small schools can easily do. I mean, it could even be scaled and used in a larger school like super easily. It's just it is designed where a small program can do it, or just a family, and that you're not just doing art projects. It's legitimate skills and products when you're done. However, this conference was great for like if you are a chemical or pesticide applicator, you have to be licensed for that and you have to do continued education. And they had a lot of classes there for that. So I think it's great that something like that is available and they only had to pay $15 to come to the event. So, I mean, that makes that really great for them. Um, there was, I looked at all of the classes and there was some that looked a little interesting, like real estate and ag. One that really stood out to me was farm to table social media marketing. Unfortunately, I didn't get to go to that class and it was taught twice. I'm actually thinking of reaching out to the woman who did the talk. But a lot of people that stopped by my booth were asking for the same thing, even like old school farmers. There was actually two conversations I had a lot while I was there, but a lot of old school farmers stopped by, and their biggest question was, how do I diversify my products? They were like, COVID almost killed us. There's no way we were going to keep the family farm. We are still struggling. And we know a lot of people are doing to direct to consumer. We tried that model, but I mean, we were going to like lose the farm, not being able to sell product. And I had a lot of really long conversations with people on how to diversify their products and to change their model to more of a direct to consumer versus the conventional model. And I mean, it happens to be that that's something I do. I do direct to consumer. I've worked with some direct to consumer marketing companies. And back 15 years ago, I used to work doing small farm consulting specifically with these smaller farms after coming out of a conventional ag setting. So it led for some really, really great conversations, but I really was surprised how many conventional farmers were looking for ways to diversify similar to how us homesteaders are. So if that's, I don't know what information, what you might do with that information, other than maybe know that that divide isn't as um, far as we thought it was. Um, I do offer like homestead business coaching. I mean, I've talked about that before on here. And so if you are looking to diversify your products, that is something that I do. But I was really surprised. I didn't have a sign up that said that, I'm a homestead business coach, come to me to talk about diversifying your products. That was what people were there for and wanted to know how to do it. And the conference was not providing that for them. And, um, I let a lot of them know about the homestead conference that we have in Idaho every year, which is just a half hour's drive from where the ag conference was. So I'm like, you will get more information there, but then the hard thing is it might be going too far. They aren't necessarily wanting to know how to start their own sourdough. They're literally just interested on how to kind of like bridge that gap between large farmers and like the commercial homestead that I talk about a lot. Um, so yeah, like I said, I'm not even 100% sure what I want to do with that information, but I really hope that that helps you see where farmers sit on that topic as well, that they're struggling and that they see the value in, shopping local and filling that market niche. So another one is they were really excited about education. Uh, I had ag teachers, retired ag teachers, people that do like education and agritourism, uh, the Grange, Farm Bureau, Washington State Extension Office, all coming to me and not just being like, oh, what you do is cool, being like, I have been looking for this. How how do I implement this into my program? Can you come talk to my group? Do you have, curriculum designed similar to like Ag in the Classroom, which is a great program. I just want to put that out there right now that I don't have any issues with Ag in the Classroom. It's through like the extension offices. But kind of what it does is it gives material for someone like the Farm Bureau to go in and have a uh pre-written class that they're doing. And it's one of those things like, you have like an assembly and or, it's special, it's Ag Day, and the Farm Bureau comes in for like one afternoon, maybe a year, maybe every 6 months or something, and they do some sort of small activity with like a fourth grade class or something. And then you don't hear anything else about that. Like it's done. There's 4-H in different states actually teaches it in school, so that's pretty cool. So they have a little bit more of a long-term learning with that, like they'll incubate birds and stuff. But especially like I can speak to West Coast a lot, and that's not the case. 4-H is just strictly like an evening, go to meetings, show at fair. There's no 4-H in schools. There is FFA in schools. But um I recently I was looking at what my options might be to be able to help schools provide a more holistic life skills and agricultural type program. And so I started doing some research into what it used to be called vocational agricultural vocational education. Now it's called career technical education. Um, Looking into what various state programs offer and how that's going. And what I found is that they do have not necessarily a set curriculum, but a set of like um what's the word for it? Like um what cores it teaches, like the whole Common Core thing, but this is as actually isn't even part of the Department of Education. It is, I think, part of the Department of Agriculture. Don't quote me on that one. Is where CTE money comes from. It's a federal program called currently we're on the Perkins 5, and every state gets a certain amount of money to fund CTE education. So they had a list of everything that, say a student that's studying animal science would need to know. And these CTE programs are designed where these kids can come out of high school with maybe a degree or certificate, um, like a 2-year degree or a certificate, and be able to go right into the workforce. And that was how it was designed. Like you did regular schooling up to 8th grade, and then you did just some core stuff in high school, and the rest of your high school time was vocational training. So then you could either get a job right out of high school, or if you really enjoyed what you did, or if you wanted to go into a more scholarly field, then you could go on to post-secondary school. The way our model is now is you have to go all the way through high school learning your core stuff. Then you go to college and you have to pay a lot to go to college to maybe find out that's not what you want to do. Or you could have become a certified welder and started welding as soon as you graduated from high school and be making 50,000 a year without debt and possibly over your lifetime make more than somebody who went to college. And I know a lot of guys who were in um like ag programs to do ag mechanics where they basically just wanted to be welders, but they got their degree. So now they have a degree where maybe they're more qualified to be a welder on a farm or something, or with large equipment on farms, but they don't necessarily make more entry level than just a regular welder who could get a job on a farm and learn the rest. Not saying one over the other is better, but I'm saying why did we let this CTE program become not as valued? Um, and the reason I say that is because when I found these cores that they need to learn, there's also a comparable, the students were tested on their ability to demonstrate each of these cores. And they do it yearly and they compile the data. And within the ag department, where I mean, I didn't dive into each one. I perused them and saw for the most part what I needed to see, and I do plan on going further into this in my future studying. But there was a chart, and it could either be like red if they either didn't understand it up to like 35%, yellow like 35 to 60%, like that they kind of got it, and then I think yeah, green I think was from like 65 on. So even like a 65% demonstration of understanding in any one place would be considered green. And these charts were completely red and with like one or two spots of green or yellow. And a lot of the places where they were green only fell under, can you demonstrate what a leader in an FFA program would exhibit? And that's, I look at that and I'm like, so basically, this program is just designed to push the kids through the competitive part of um, the FFA program and not actually the deep studies of that. And I would really love to see more holistic programs, which, like I said, I wrote a blog about it. I'm probably going to talk about this a little bit more on another podcast because today's is still about agriculture and just filling in some blanks on that. So, one of the concerns I did hear from a lot of these farmers was that, we're having the conversation of we don't want corporate farms. And this woman goes, but we're a corporate farm. Like, we needed to be able to protect ourselves. So, myself, my husband, and his brother incorporated. We're still a family farm. And I was like, okay, like, let's back up because I feel like I really like hurt your feelings right there. And that was not my goal. My goal was to state that I don't want Monsanto running all of our farms. I'm fine with the mom and pop down the road that incorporated. But that is a really hard one to um what's the word for it? Quantify. So when we say there's, say a million farmers, I think there's more than that. I think there's definitely more than that, but say there's a million farmers and 250,000 of them, or maybe, 50,000 of them are like the big corporate, like bad guys. But the thing is, they also produce 40 or 50% of all of the outputs. So they do have like the biggest control because they own the most and they have the most money. Then you have like 250,000 that are incorporated family farms. So are they considered corporate farms when we're looking at who like the big ag bad guy is? Then there's the farmers, and then there's maybe another 250,000 or more. I mean, obviously I'm working with theoretical numbers that are considered small farms that because their main source of income is off-farm income, don't even list themselves as farms on the census, but actually do have um make a valuable difference in like the farm economy and stuff and where our food comes from and filling that supply chain need. So, just something to consider when you're having that conversation about corporate versus small farms. Um, so I want to chat to you with you about what agriculture is today. Um, it's still a way of life. It's probably, I hope it always stays a way of life. Like I said, farmers farm because yeah, they have to pay their bills, but they would farm anyways. They would they would figure it out because they just want to farm. Um, it's different. But there has been a huge shift away from the small farm and the standard family farm since the ag revolution in like the 70s, which is when so many things became mechanized and crops were able to yield so much more due to some of it being GMOs, some of it being fertilization practices and that type of stuff, that the same piece of acreage could produce more with less labor outputs, which in a lot of ways that's great because then that opens up the labor force to provide other things. But then at the same time, I think having a bored labor force that isn't having to work has led to a lot of the sociological issues that um we're fighting against right now. Not to say that everybody needs to get out there and start picking tomatoes or something, but I think that there's something to be said for it. Um, this has led to Big Ag getting a really bad name, and that's not the whole picture. In fact, so these family farms that I'm talking about, even the ones that are incorporated, um, their median household income is about 100,000 a year. Um, that's primarily due to off-farm income. Their median farm income is negative 900. So when I say the farmers are doing it for the paycheck, their paycheck is they owe $900. And their off-farm income is that's the wives have to go out and get jobs so that they can have medical insurance. They have to have regular yearly job, like year-round jobs, so that they can pay for the farm labor and pay the mortgage and that type of stuff. And then at the end of the year, when they harvest everything, that's when they get their paycheck. Through various ways. But with that, um, a lot of times that money is just turned around and rolled right back into supporting the business. Paying for next year's seed and fertilizer, paying the tractor leasing company. But here's the key one, it also pays the farm taxes. If they were to stop farming, they wouldn't be able to afford their farm taxes. But the farm model that's going on is so much money has to go into next year's crop because they can't save seeds because they're all non-GMO. We have to massively fertilize because otherwise they're not going to have the yields that they need to be able to keep up with the market. You have to be able to afford the equipment to farm your fields at that high yield level. And so there isn't really any other options without selling out. One that's become really popular with chickens and pork is I think it's called the linear farm model. And that is where, say, you become like a chicken farmer, you contract through Foster Farms or Purdue or whoever is doing those chickens, and you take out a loan or put your own farm inputs in to build this $30,000 building that you can cram 300,000 birds into. You buy the birds from Foster Farms, then you buy the feed that they have stated what type of feed they need. So you pretty much have to buy it from them or one of their suppliers. You can't say, hey, I think they grow out better with more protein. No, no, no. This is the feed they get. This is the medications they get. This is the antibiotics they get. But you have to pay for all of those. Then, after you buy them all at the rate that they set, you then turn around and sell them to like the next step in the line, which is like the slaughter plants at market value. So market value might make you money, it might not, but you're going to pay the same amount for those birds regardless of market value, but you're going to sell them at whatever the market deems appropriate at that time. So I hope you see the problem with that. And they're confinement operations. Those are what we don't want to do anyways. So, but for a lot of farmers, that's the only way they're able to keep the family farm at this point is to buy into that model. And I feel bad for them, but because when they go to farm conferences, when they get their farm periodicals in the mail, those are not talking about how to diversify your products, how to make money in different ways, how, if you stop getting subsidies or whatever, that you can go into a regenerative agriculture model and get grants and then still sell your product at top dollar, not subsidized amount, and probably make more than you were ever making before. They don't talk about that. They put Purdue pays for the big ads that say, hey, you could make $100,000 a year if you sign up with us. And they go, we have never made $100,000 a year. Let's do it. But they don't talk about what you have to pay to make that $100, 100,000. So that's my rant. That's my high horse. I'm gonna go ahead and get off my soapbox and keep talking to you about what's going on in agriculture. Okay, so I am just now really starting to understand subsidies. I learned about them in college, but I never felt like they clicked. Um, it was, and I still think that there's a lot of facets that I don't understand. In fact, I know there is because I'm reading a book right now that is talking about every layer of like ag policy from like 1900 through current. And there's a lot that I'm like, I can't even begin to absorb this, but let me get the big pieces. There's a lot I could go into on this, but what I'd really like to point out is that subsidies are only for certain crops, and they do not include meats, fruits, or vegetables, which, if you notice, are our highest priced items at the store. Milk, however, is subsidized, but a lot of times go look and see how much milk is, like how much a gallon of subsidized milk, which is going to be commercial milk, um, like whatever is in the big gallons. And then just look and see even organic, a lot of organic is subsidized. Um, Look at like if you have a raw milk in your area or like a big raw milk dairy, not like buying from the mom and pop down the road, like what you would buy at the store. Some of the organics that don't get subsidies, they'll be a different brand than the commercials, and they're going to be about half the price if, or twice the price, if not more, because that's how much milk really costs. Um, because what you are getting charged is so basically like the farmer sells the milk for a fraction of what it actually costs them to produce the milk. They buy the grain that they feed the cows at a fraction of what it costs to produce the grain. And then farm subsidies come in and pay that difference to make it where the farmer gets their money back plus hopefully some income. Um, but you don't have to pay the price that is subsidized by the government. You're still paying that lower price that basically the farmer was charged. I mean, of course, there's a lot in between. And if you pay $2 for a gallon of milk, the farmer probably got about 25 cents a gallon. So and then even still, that was way lower than it should have been. And you're still paying $2 for your gallon of milk. Although I don't know that I've seen $2 milk in a really long time. Um, so subsidies usually have to be things that can be stored. I'm not sure why milk falls under that, except for maybe because you can do so many other things with it, like making cheeses, or because milk is so necessary for like children and stuff. I'm not really sure on that one. But looking at it, milk was pretty much the only profitable subsidy like in 2023. That doesn't mean you should go out and buy a commercial dairy because that is a lot. What it does mean though is that none of these farmers are really making any money. Um, these subsidized crops are the ones that honestly they make the foods that are like probably the least nutrient dense out there. So, yeah, if you use the flour to make a nice loaf of sourdough bread, that's pretty nutrient dense. But the majority of it's not going to that. It's going the crops. It's not just wheat, it's corn and sorghum and sugar and a whole bunch of other ones. So, I mean, literally right there, like cereal, like, and not like oatmeal, which even oatmeal isn't great, but like boxed cereal with all the like colors in it, and it's like puffed rice, so there's really nothing left of it at that point. And then they add a ton of sugar. And that, and then you could buy that for, well, I don't know, cereal's gone up too. Like every once in a while, like, I mean, I need some Cinnamon Toast Crunch. And I went to buy some the other day and it was like $7 for a tiny little box of it. And I was like, okay, well, I don't need it that bad. But what I'm getting at though is these products are by weight usually cheaper. Um, or it looks like it, because if you really broke it down what the weight is, it's way cheaper to buy nutrient dense products. But then they taste good and children want them and children are marketed them in schools and on down the line. And then a lot of these products, grain products, they just go into storage in case we ever need a surplus. Like as a country, they go into ethanol production. So all of this isn't even coming to our plates, which I'm fine with it going to ethanol production. But if you're going to subsidize ethanol production and then turn around and charge us an arm and a leg for it, when you're not charging us an arm and a leg for cereal corn, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what should happen with that. But basically, um, it has skewed the food pricing system to where people like small farms can't sell their products. Small farms are not subsidized. I'm going to get into that in a second. Um, they can't subsidize their products. So, and even like beef can't subsidize their product, but the grain that they buy for their beef is subsidized. So it does keep those prices a lot lower. So then if you go buy beef or pork from your neighbor, you're gonna pay more for it because they're buying grain from a local farmer, they're feeding their animals on their local farm, and then these animals are actually paying for their homes versus the government covering the difference. So yeah, it's skewed the system, which also has made us less healthy because we're going to choose the cheap, tasty foods over the nutrient dense foods that require work. So I guess maybe not tasty, like cheap, unhealthy, convenient food over nutrient dense food that has to be cooked. And I think that between the subsidy system and the lack of education, both in vocational agriculture and in like home economics or consumer sciences or whatever you want to call it, has caused a big piece of this like childhood health crisis that is currently being addressed at the national level. So like I said, small farms don't receive subsidies. There are some programs available for some grants and things like that. And I think that's great. You know, they'll do for like regenerative farming and education, but oh my gosh, it is such a small piece. Like one of the regenerative farming programs is less than 0.01% of the farm bill. And it is one of the bigger regenerative agriculture programs. So, I mean, if that tells you what we're really looking at, I mean, heck, 3/4 of the farm bill or 2/3 or something like that goes directly to welfare. And I was on welfare at one point. Like I was a single mom in college. I got my food stamps. But when that much of such a large bill is going to welfare and then they're not being educated properly, and they say like they failed at the level of teaching food stamp recipients what is healthy food. No, you failed at teaching a society what healthy food is. And now you also have food stamp recipients that are using it to buy soda pop. I mean, it's last year or 2 years ago, something like $8 million, no, $8 billion of food stamp funding went to soda pop. I think it was a lot. It was way more than I think should have been spent. Um, so and it's in my blog. You can go look at that. I'll link it. The one on nutrient dense food. So, anyways, if a farmer wants to get one of these grants that I talked about, if it's sorry, my phone went off of do not disturb and my kids needed to know if we could buy a new heat lamp because our pig keeps killing the heat lamp, and she's got the one that has the babies out in the open wind, which is why I need to figure out how to have a better farm system. But well, I just need one part of my barn enclosed, but I don't have that kind of money. So uh anyways, they have to apply for these programs. They have to apply for them as a loan, which means they have to have good credit and stuff like that. And I don't know how many of you deal with farmers, but a lot of them have bad credit because they have to use their credit to run the farm throughout the year. Because if they're not getting those subsidies and stuff like that, they have to use credit cards and loans and whatever else to run their farm. Um, and they can't always pay it back until harvest season, which is where they get into that circle of not being able to be like, I want to take out a USDA loan to rebuild my barn and figure out a new way to do rotational grazing. And then they get like a small farm grant and they get a small farm loan and then a regenerative agriculture grant because they have to use their small farm loans if they can even get one just to be able to still function. So it's this really bad circle. Whereas if you have a subsidy or a crop that can be subsidized, you literally just have to register and show that you are contributing enough to be part of this program. So, like, I mean, it's like one page of paperwork versus applying for a grant or a loan is huge, which a lot of farmers, they're too busy and, you know, lack of better word, like uneducated in that. And I don't want to say farmers are uneducated because they're the smartest people I know most of the time. But if they didn't go to school to learn about finance or writing grants and grant proposals and things like that, like I, it's just not available to them. And there's definitely not the state ag department knocking on doors offering you money. Um, they just can be really daunting and not available to a lot of farmers. So, what I think this new administration could do to help the farming situation, which they actually have a line item in the new executive order that states they want to work with farmers to come up with cheaper, more affordable, and available foods. But there's not a lot farmers can actually do to provide that. It's you need to educate the people on what to buy and where to buy it and how to create local food systems. But unless you're going to subsidize some of these other products or help with these small farmers be able to get into local markets and things like that, there's not a lot a farmer can do to lower prices. They already are charging their lowest price possible and probably losing money. That negative $900 a year, yeah, that says something. Um, so yeah, I mean, they need to be teaching kids and high schoolers, really like high schoolers who are getting ready to go out into the real world and be the ones that are grocery shopping and cooking and things like that. Stop teaching fourth graders how to plant seeds. No, don't stop teaching fourth graders how to plant seeds, but don't make that their main source of agriculture education and don't end it there. Like teach them how to save seeds, teach them and continue that. Like teach them how to eat tomatoes. I mean, I know a lot of you're probably laughing when I say that, but there's a lot of kids who don't know how to eat fresh fruits and vegetables and ways to pair them that actually taste good to kids. And I'll admit, I was probably the first one on that. Like I remember as a kid, um, I went to a friend's house and her dinner was cottage cheese and peaches. And I thought, "Ugh," like, who eats that? And why would, even if they did, why would that be considered a dinner? I'll tell you what, that's one of my favorite meals now, except I don't always do peaches. A lot of times I like fresh tomatoes with a little salt and pepper, or maybe like a chicken or turkey patty on the side, like one of my favorite meals. But if you're not taught and allowed to taste it and um, those types of things, if your family isn't providing that, you're not going to learn that. And if your family, if your parents were born in the last two generations, which they probably were, they weren't taught that in school either. So it ends up with a cycle of children and adults who don't know how to eat healthy foods, don't know how to preserve foods, don't know how to cook. And So it's easy to just go buy the convenient foods that are primarily the subsidized sugars. Um, so yeah, I would love to see more money funding into local programs for like victory gardens. I joke that like everybody should have a victory cow. Maybe not everybody, but I mean, I would be more than happy to be part of a program that my small dairy gets a certain amount of money to be able to provide milk to the community, you know, or provide, I don't know, like my jars or something like that, or a cheaper feed program that I can still get that high quality that I want to be feeding my animals, or the good quality jars where I'm not putting it in plastic, which people don't want. And then people just have to pay for the milk, not all the other stuff. I think that would be an amazing program. As a farmer, I can still feed my family, and as a farmer, I still can feed my community and feel good about it. Um, I think that there should be like more of the home ec and vocational agriculture type classes. Like I said, they call them career technical education or um, consumer sciences at this point. I don't think home ec should be just for girls because boys need to know how to cook, they need to know how to budget, they need to know how to clean a house. And that all should be part of it. And it shouldn't be an optional class because I know I'm going to get so many people coming and saying, they haven't got rid of those programs. Don't be spreading false information. No, they haven't gotten rid of those programs. They aren't required and they aren't valued in the same way that they were historically or that they could be again to help people get real jobs and know where their food is actually coming from and be able to feed themselves. So, like I said, I am developing programs along with a few agencies for more outreach and looking forward to seeing what changes we can make together. Until next week, I hope you keep growing. Thank you for joining me today at the Homestead Education, and I hope that I have given you something to think about this week. To help others find me, please comment and leave a review on your favorite podcast player. You can also follow me on Facebook at the Homestead Education and Instagram at Homestead_education. Do you have questions that you would like answered or just want to say hi? Please email me at hello@thehomesteadeducation.com. Until next time, keep growing!